Brand new. But it's I did send you the link. Yes.
But I didn't get it till.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I definitely sent it. Yeah. You only got it later. It's always hard to navigate. Yeah. Okay. Let's party like it's Sunday morning, Kabbalah. Let's look at our online folks in. Morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Ooh, very nice. Dr. Maxi. Great to see you. Very good. Fran, great to see you. Maritza, great to see you. Mariana, welcome. And Ellen, welcome. It is great to have you guys here. All right, we're just about to get started. Of course, this week is Purim, right? We got tomorrow night. We got a holiday coming up. This is a party, always a party. I'm going to speak about synchronicity in a moment, because we have some incredible synchronicity this morning. Mariana, welcome. I think when I said welcome before, I don't know if you could hear. I think you were still connecting with the audio. So welcome. It's great to have you here. Hey, good to see you. Welcome. Okay. We have so much to talk about today. It is wild. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to get started officially. Once we start the recorder, we have game on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kabbalah Café. It is great to have you here on this fine Sunday morning. This is Erev Purim, right? Tomorrow night begins the holiday, and we have so much to talk about with our Kabbalah class. And I want to say this: it's incredible how things coincide and how ideas and themes collide in a good way, because where we're up to in this discourse, which is right at the beginning of this new discourse that we're studying, which I've titled Have a Little Faith, right in the beginning of this discourse, it talks about the sin of the golden calf. Well, guess what this Torah portion is? This week, the Torah portion is Kitisa, which is all about, good morning, which is all about the sin of the golden calf. And this morning, I want to ask the question that we've all wondered. There's two layers of the question. There's the easy question and the more nuanced question. The easy question is, how could the Jews sin with the sin of the golden calf? What were they thinking? A mere 40 days after Revelation at Sinai, after receiving the 10 Commandments, at least verbally, after hearing from the Almighty, I am the Lord your God, and you shall not have any other gods. How could they create a golden calf and worship it? That's the easy question. I don't mean there's an easy answer, but that's the obvious question. The more difficult question, the one that I think we've also wondered, but maybe felt bad to ask, is how did Aaron get involved in that golden calf? How was he involved in the golden calf? I mean, that sounds, good morning. That sounds a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is. That's a little bit hard. It's a bit of a harder question to ask, because we're targeting a specific person who we would presume should know better. Right? We would all presume that Aaron, of all people, should know better than to get involved in this creation of a golden calf. And again, it's coming up in our Hasidic discourse in the Maimer, in the Kabbalistic text that we're studying, but it's also this week's Torah portion. And the Torah portion begins, although we're going to read it this coming Shabbat in a few days, in 6 days, but this whole week we live with this Torah portion. This whole Torah portion, the core of it, and that's why I say there's a beautiful synchronicity with what we're studying Sunday and with the Torah portion this week. It's all about the golden calf. And there's so many things you can focus on. We can focus again on the bigger question about the Jewish people, but I want to focus today on what Aaron was thinking. What was he thinking? And to help us understand this, we're going to go through some classic understandings of this. First of all, the first thing that we need to do is remind ourselves of the story of the details. So I want to pass around the handout with some text on it. It's got an excerpt from the Torah itself, from Exodus, from this Torah portion, and it has the Midrash Tanchuma, one of the Midrashic texts on this Torah portion. And we'll see some pretty incredible insights. All right, so please take and pass. Please take and pass. And then I'm going to pull it up on the screen as well. Again, today's objective is to figure out what was Aaron thinking. Oh, by the way, the class is titled, for those that got the email, even for those that didn't get the email, the class is still titled, All That Glitters. All That Glitters. And we're going to be exploring things that glitter, of course, gold and other shiny objects and why we are so attracted to them. All right, but let's take this step by step. I want to begin with the handout that I prepared. Let me pull it up on the screen so that our online crew can also see what we're doing here. All right. Momentarily, we're going to get this started. Give me a quick second. All right. Kabbalah Café, have a little faith. Yeah. Supplementary text, chapter 1. I'm going to read this, Faith Crisis. Okay, this is the excerpt from Exodus 32, verses 1 through 4. Again, this week's Torah portion, Kitisa, says the following. When the people saw that Moses delayed Voshesh to come down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and they said to him, "Come on, make us gods that will go before us. For this man Moses, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him." So, as I mentioned last week, I'll just reset it this week so that we're nice and fresh and all on the same page. Moses, after the Sinai revelation, Moses the next morning says to the people, "Folks, I'm out of here. I'll be back." He goes up the mountain to receive the rest of the law and the explanation, i.e. the Torah, from the Almighty, from God. Now, whether or not, this is interesting, whether or not he told them when he would come back, i.e. 40 days later, is the subject of a great dispute amongst the commentaries. Most commentaries say that he told them he would be back in 40 days. And the fact that they panicked, which we're reading right here in this opening paragraph verse, the reason that they panic is because 40 days elapsed according to their account and he hadn't returned. Some commentaries explain that he never told them when he's going to come back. So they arbitrarily picked a day that they would begin panicking on, right? At a certain point, we run out of patience. You ever have an experience where you wait for something? And then after whatever amount of time elapses, at that point, you're like, okay, enough is enough. It's too long. According to those commentaries, that's what happened. He didn't give them a time. Moses didn't give the people a time. And it was too long, and they panicked. So what do? The first person they go to is Aaron. They go to Aaron. And they say to Aaron, "Make us gods that will go before us." Because we don't know what happened to Moses. Let's continue. Aaron said to them, "Remove the golden earrings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." All the people stripped themselves of the golden earrings that were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took them from their hands, fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made it into a molten calf, upon which they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt." Okay, so this is what happens. What's clear from the text, what seems to be clear from the text, is that Aaron, who, by the way, is no small potatoes, Aaron is the brother of Moses, the brother of Miriam, from that, I don't know what you would call it, the golden family, the crown jewel of the Jewish people, the family of three. There were three siblings. Miriam was the oldest, then Aaron, and then Moses was the baby of the family, but of course became very famous, rose to prominence as the leader and the savior of the Jewish people. And here we have Aaron involved on this creation of the golden calf. Again, understand this. We have 3 paragraphs here. In paragraph 1, the people approach Aaron. In paragraph 2, Aaron gives them the advice or gives them the instruction, the directive, "Bring me gold." And in paragraph number 3, he makes it into a golden calf. So what's going on? Yes, Ray.
Okay. If I recall this week, I think you might have mentioned that he asked for the gold from the brothers or whatever, but I don't think he said, did he say the wives? Did he say the women?
He said the wives, and the commentators explained because he thought that their wives would not participate, right? Would not give up and participate in that act. We're going to get there in a second. the first thing you're right. You're 100% right, Ray. And we're going to get there in a second as we have the measures right after this that I want to quote. But the first question that comes to mind is Aaron seems to be in on this problem. And as the Torah portion continues to explain, what happens in the aftermath of the golden calf is that thousands of people are executed for the sin of idolatry. And the Jewish people are punished. And what happens to Aaron?
Nothing.
It would seem like nothing happens to Aaron. Garnished, nothing happens to, you know what happens to him? He becomes the high priest, the first high priest in history. That's his consequence. He gets. Sorry?
Obviously not a salesman, doesn't keep on speed. You say, listen, gather your stuff tonight and tomorrow, give him a day.
Right. He was trying to buy a day. Look what he says. You know why? Okay. I cut this off too early. I shouldn't have cut this text with verse 4, because right after they said that, the next verse is that Aaron says to the people, build an altar. It gets worse. He says, build an altar. Good morning. Build an altar and let's bring sacrifices to the Lord tomorrow. That's what he says. So he is buying time. He is buying a day with the altar, with the worship of it. But then they surprised him by waking up first thing in the morning, early morning, before Moses had time to come back. So there was a bit of a delay tactic, as we'll see, based on the commentaries, but it seems like he didn't do a good job. He didn't think, I would agree with that as far as thinking on his feet quickly, you know, in retrospect, we might have taken a different approach and he might have taken a different approach. But it seems like, again, at first glance, it seems like there is some culpability here. It seems like, in fact, not only some culpability, it seems like on every level, he's the one who designs, who conceives of, almost designs, creates, and calls it something to worship. Again, I know I cut it here, my apologies, but he literally says to the people, tomorrow, let's build an altar, and tomorrow we're going to worship. Aaron, bro, what are you doing?
I was always impressed that the guy was a goldsmith all of a sudden.
Right? He has a fashioning tool. He pulls that out of his hat. Yeah, we knew he could.
Everyone, the whole Kahila, that was the best guy to go to.
He was the guy. Oh, hold on one second. Good. Hold on one second. Good. Now, you have to understand, this question bothers all the commentators. It's a glaring question because when you read the text and then you read the whole Torah, you realize that Aaron kind of skates by all of this stuff, right? Aaron is skating through this. All of the commentaries, and when I say commentaries, I mean the earliest commentaries contained in the Medrash, which goes back, which was published thousands of years ago, based on teachings that go back even farther than that. So the Medrash deals with it. All the Midrashim deal with this. All the commentaries deal with it, each in their own way. I was learning last night, and Ibn Ezra, who goes through a lot of different commentaries on this story, debunks a lot of them, and has his own theory. Everyone has a theory. I want to share with you the most common ideas, and then we're going to learn some insight. Okay? Common theory number one, as I believe Yaakov just mentioned, is that Aaron, to start off with the first question, why did he get involved? Why didn't he tell the people, as we would say as kids, go fly a kite, right? Where's Moses? We're panicked. Get out of here. Wait, a little savlanut, a little patience. Why didn't he tell them that? So one answer that's given is that he was afraid for his life. Why was he afraid for his life? There was an angry mob. Oh, that's what the Ibn Ezra asked. Good. Hold on. Hold your question. Excellent. I told you. There's a lot of ideas and a lot of them are debunked. There's a lot of questions. This is great.
Was the bad guy here?
Who?
Edgar G. Robinson was the troublemaker.
Who's? Oh.
Sam, we're too old. I bet.
Who was he? He was Aaron?
No, he was the troublemaker.
He was the troublemaker. Dustin and Abiram. Yeah, Dathan and Abiram. Yeah. Okay, good. I didn't know who played it. I know Charlton Heston. I know, right? He was Moses.
Same movie.
Those who will not live by the law shall die by the law. And he smashed the tablets. All right, but back to the story. So here's the deal. According to the tradition, as brought in the Medrash, the angry mob had already killed someone. Who was it? They already had blood in their hands. It was a man named Hur. Who was Hur? Hur was the son of Miriam. Remember, 3 siblings. Miriam was the oldest. 4 years later, Aaron was born. 4 years later, Moses was born. Okay, Miriam, Aaron, Moses. Moses is on the mountain. Miriam, the oldest, she was a prophetess, right? She was a tzaddikas, very righteous and revered person in the community. She had a son named Hur. When the people began panicking, good morning, when the people began panicking, and so where's Moses? What should we do? Before they gathered against Aaron, Hur tried to stop the angry mob. And Hur said, "You're welcome."
Thank you. The word in the 9 o'clock menu?
Yeah.
No class.
We got to debunk these false rumors. The proof is in the pudding. I actually have a copy phone. Yeah. Oh, is that extra? All right. Either way. So here's the deal. Hur tried to stop the mob. He said, "Guys, what are you doing? Let's wait. Patience, etc." And they murdered him in cold blood. That's from the Medrash. It's not in the scripture itself, not in the Torah text itself, but this is the story that we have. That they killed Hur. And so now they come to Aaron, to Aaron, and they say, "Will you help us?" What's he going to say? Right? Now, the problem with that is, well, one second, just because someone was killed for not getting involved in idolatry means that you should get involved in idolatry. It's one of the 3 big no-nos. The 3 mitzvot that you give up your life for rather than participate in. One of them is idolatry. Creating an idol for worship, that seems to be something to give one's life for. So that question, that perspective or that answer, right, as was pointed out, is a little bit weakened. Okay. So now we move on to the next common answer that's given. Again, trying to ascribe best intentions to Aaron. Okay. Okay. The next theory that's out there is that
I fixed it wrong. He didn't want it. I don't want to go to waste. Anyone?
I'm sure somebody will eat it. Jeff, you're always serving good food. Look at you. Now we have a debate breaking out about how much carbs we want on a Sunday. All right, so back to the story. So the second idea that's offered, and by the way, these aren't like necessarily exclusive, exclusive to each other. We can put them in combination to each other. But the next idea that's offered is that Aaron was simply seeking to delay them until such time that Moses would actually return. Because, again, according to the theory that Moses gave them a date, which was 40 days, and according to the theory that they miscalculated by 1 day, all Aaron had to do, because you can't reason with a mob, but all he had to do was actually kick it out a day, and by that time, the issue would be resolved. He knew the issue would be resolved, so his objective was just to kick it out, delay it by a day, and all would be good.
So Moses was a real good leader. And if he couldn't control the mob, he just asked God, he's like, "These guys are going to kill me. They're threatening to kill me. So can you help out here?"
Can you step in? Yeah.
Yeah. So Aaron, we learned like he was a peacemaker, he was a people person. So did he just kind of gauge, hey, here's the way it's going. I can't sway this guy. So let me go with him. And did he lack the leadership?
So I want to repeat what you're saying so that everyone can hear online as well. So Yaakov is asking, we see it happened as actually, I think at least one time, maybe even a few times with Moses, where the mob gangs up on him. There was an issue with water. There was an issue with food. There was an issue with water again. At the end of the 40 years, there's multiple issues where the people did gang up on Moses. Moses either typically
Jews together.
there's always going to be a mob, right? Sounds see that he's already ganging up on you, but he's like, one or two.
Right.
Yeah. Say it again. A break. They would have made it right.
The breakaway man was not as good.
Listen, the one thing about a Jewish community is that the famous joke, right? They find the guy, a Jew stranded on an island after like 40 years, right? And he's showing them how he survived. And he shows them 2 buildings. He says, This is the
I'll
synagogue.
take over. This is the hut I built where I could live and everything, and I relax in there. And these two buildings, they say, what are they? He says, well, this one is the synagogue where I pray. They say, oh, very nice. What's the other one? He says, that's also a synagogue, but I wouldn't step foot in that place.
I would never step in that, right? Is that so? It could be what Yaakov was suggesting, that Moses had this knack for leadership or turned to God in these types of moments to deal with it or to help out, whereas Aaron was trying to kind of navigate it in a way to make everyone okay. Like he'll give in to the people, he'll make them feel like he's on their side, but buy enough time that it's going to resolve and everyone's going to be happy. But as we know, it turns out, and I think life also bears out this truth, that sometimes when you're trying to make everyone happy, it can blow up and make things worse, right? Instead of taking a tougher stance, you try to placate everybody, then not always, but sometimes it can really backfire. Yeah. Yeah.
I get that bacon where he throws it in there and it pops up.
Good.
But it is stall.
Right. Good. Good.
Let's get everything melted, purified, molded into the table.
So I want to repeat your question. So Sam's question is, so why didn't he push off the gold? I think this question was asked before. Why didn't he push off the gold gathering for a day? So it seems like this. It's a good question. I'm just sharing with you what it says in the books. Piecing together literally dozens of commentaries. So one theory is he was trying to do that with the gold collection. And that's why he said, gather it from your wives and your daughters, knowing that the Jewish women would never consent to giving their jewelry for such a ridiculous purpose. And thus the men would not come back with the gold. So he thought that was a surefire way to not end up with any gold. But then they came up with their own gold. Great. So then now you're asking a good question. Why did he then throw it immediately into the fire? I don't have an answer for that. And I don't know if it's discussed. I'm sure it's discussed somewhere, but I don't recall an answer for that. But as I mentioned before, he did say, let's build an altar. And then tomorrow we'll bring sacrifices, which again sounds a little dodgy. Why even is he saying tomorrow? I know he's pushing them off a day, but why is he even saying worship? According to Ibn Ezra, he was never, according to and other commentaries, he wasn't actually saying we're going to build an altar and we'll worship the golden calf tomorrow. He was saying build an altar and we'll worship Hashem, we'll worship God tomorrow. But they misunderstood it and thought, a golden calf came out, let's worship the golden calf tomorrow. It's basically the worst cases, disaster happens when sometimes when all of the worst case scenarios happen, like a confluence of worst case, Perfect storm. Yeah, thank you. Perfect storm of bad things happening. Like if any one thing would have happened a little bit differently, the whole thing wouldn't have happened. Like had they not come up, had he taken perhaps a harsher stance and pushed them off even from the beginning, but he was afraid for his life. Had they not come back with the gold, because he told them to collect the gold from your wives and daughters, and he thought that was a surefire way to not get the gold. Had they not come up with the gold, that was a way out. Had the next day they taken a little bit more time to create the altar and begin worshiping also. So here's a collection of ideas that help. What's the word I want to look for? That help, not implicate. What's the opposite of implicate? Exonerate. Help exonerate Aaron. Clearly, his hands touched the golden calf. Clearly, there's no question about it. He was involved with the golden calf. But what were his intentions? Were his intentions about idolatry and about worshiping the calf, or were his intentions a little bit pure? And according to the commentaries, each one in their own way, everyone's trying to figure out how he was a little less guilty than it would seem based on the plain text. I will say that some commentaries say he was punished. Where was he punished?
Kohen Gadol.
Leadership, right? Yeah. What was? And his two sons died. There are commentators that say that his son's dying on the day that the Mishkan was opening day, ribbon cutting, right? They had the big scissors, the ribbon cutting of the Mishkan. Nadav and Avihu, his two oldest sons, died Many commentaries attribute that to that. In fact, after that, Aaron the Torah says, Moses tells him, go to the altar. Maybe it was before that. Maybe it was before that. And Aaron doesn't want to approach, and he says he was ashamed. He was ashamed because of what he had done. His involvement with the golden calf. And Moses says, the fact that you're embarrassed, the fact that you're heartbroken over it, that's the reason why you should go, etc.
He was sad and Moses said.
No, I think it was before. I think the beginning of Torah portion of Shemini, I think it's right before. And so he approaches, and then he brings the sacrifices, and then it says, and there's the sons brought, and then their lives were taken. It seems like he wasn't. It seems like he shared his. He experienced tragedy, and again, far from me to sit here and attribute anything, but according to commentaries, it is attributed. Yeah.
The one thing that I don't see in here that should be obvious is why didn't first step be say, hey, guys, what are you going crazy here? Look what we just witnessed. How could you,
So the response to that is that Hur, his nephew, Aaron, Miriam's son, literally tried to do all that.
And that's why they killed him?
Yeah, he said, guys, let's wait. Take it easy. Moses wouldn't abandon us. He's coming back.
But is that Medrash or?
It's all Medrash. Yeah, it's all Medrash. The Hur tried to stop them, try to calm down the situation. They would not listen. They killed him, and then they went on to Aaron. Or maybe they were on their way to Aaron.
It wasn't in the movie.
Is it in the? It's not in the movie.
No, it's not in the movie.
Really? Why would they not add that? That's another great layer of drama.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
No, it's not in the
authentic.
movie.
Really?
Yeah, you know
They
what?
should redo that.
When I was in elementary school and took classes, we always liked when the teacher brought in the audio visual equipment
Yeah.
to show us a movie.
Movie time.
Excellent. Come on, I'm sorry.
So if Aaron's apparently knew that Moses was coming down at day 40.
Yeah.
And he was just trying to get them one day, he couldn't even get one day. Why didn't you tell him? This is day 39 or whatever. But this is day, we'll be here in a couple hours.
I don't think that at that point the logic would resonate. I don't think you can reason with an unruly mob. It's kind of like when someone's in a very emotional state in general, like a person very worked up emotionally to intellectually try to bring them down from that usually doesn't work because they're just not. It's just speaking in different. It's yeah. I mean, it's just you're speaking a different language. It's just not. It's like when someone, whatever. There's many examples. So, okay, I want to share with you though. On the bottom of this sheet, there's a Medrash Tanchuma. Okay, I pulled from this. I literally was choosing from dozens and dozens of texts that we could cite this morning, and I may share some more because I have them. I just didn't want to create a handout that was like 40 pages long, but so we'll read one, and then I have online. I have on my computer. I'm going to read some more, but let's start with this one. Okay, let me share my screen so that everyone can see what we're doing. No, just the second half of the first page. You see right underneath what we read, it says the bolded words. It says when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down. All right, this is where the Midrash begins. Okay, this is, and just so you know, this is
Torah Center 5180.
the other bolded text in the middle of the page, not the footer, the middle of the page. So in the middle of the page, so this is the Midrash Tanchuma Kitisa 19, which is basically the Midrash on this Torah portion, on that section that deals with the golden calf. So the first thing the Midrash does is it quotes the verse. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down, that's the quote. Okay, so the Midrash, this is now, the rest is the Midrash. Literally word for word in translation. The word boshesh, delayed, indicates that it was the 6th hour of the day. Boshesh, I mentioned this last week. Boshesh means, ba means come, shesh means 6, means the 6th hour has arrived. So it was midday and he hadn't come back. That was when he was supposed to come back. He was delayed. Boshesh, and he wasn't here. So we got a problem. Right? Sinai, we've got a problem. 40,000 people had assembled to leave Egypt with the Israelites. 40,000 people had assembled to leave Egypt with the Israelites. Hold on. Who are these 40,000?
The mixed rabble was 40,000.
40,000. Oh, the Erev Rav. Who are the Erev Rav? The Erev Rav, also literally translated as the mixed multitude. These were Egyptians that had joined the Exodus. These were Egyptians that said, you know what? we're going to hitch our wagon to these guys. They seem to be on the winning team. We're in. These are what we would call maybe fair weather fans, right? It's like, oh my gosh, who won the Super Bowl? Oh, I love Kansas City. Yeah.
They saw what happened.
Okay.
If you were there, you would have gone too.
Well, Aaron, think of, we need something to.
Hold on.
We got 40,000 people.
Yes.
That don't believe in what we believe in.
Right. Their whole idea, their whole concept is idols. Good. Hold on. Hold that thought. I don't know if we're going to get to it here, but we are going to get to that idea.
Did they get to go to Har Sinai? The 40,000?
They were there.
The 40,000.
This is 40 days after Sunday. They were there.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Hashem told Moshe to gather Bnei Yisrael.
And Moses said, we're also going to let these folks in. And then it backfired. We'll see. We'll see. I don't think they made it to Israel. The whole generation didn't make it to Israel. Even the perhaps. There's an Arizal, by the way. There's an Arizal. I was learning last night. Kabbalah. There's an Arizal on this, the same exact topic. Explains Moses' intention in bringing out these individuals with the Israelites. The intention was to refine the sparks, the holy sparks that were within them, that were in this lower place in Egypt, and to refine, create this incredible light. The Arizal really gets into it. It's I was actually thinking about including it, but it was super, super deep. So I didn't include it, but there is some discussion about that. Now, let's continue. So 40,000 people had assembled to leave Egypt with the Israelites. And listen to this. Now we're naming names. And among them were two Egyptians named Yanis and Yambres. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. In the Hebrew, it's actually Yunus and Yombrus. But I guess in the English, that's how it's written. I don't know how to pronounce that. Janice? I don't know. I mean, whatever. Okay, so these were two. Listen to this. Amongst them were these two Egyptians who had performed magical feats for Pharaoh. These were not just random Egyptians off the street. These were of the magicians of Pharaoh, as it is written, and the magicians of Egypt in like manner with their arts. Now that's a fragment of a verse. What it means is that as some of the plagues and miracles were happening, the Egyptian magicians were able to replicate some of them. And here the Midrash is telling us that two of those magicians actually were part of the 40,000 that joined the Exodus. Kind of cool, right? Let's continue.
Their magicians, were they the priests as well? Or was that separate?
I don't know. I don't know that they're the same. They might not be the same.
So would their descendants be considered Jewish because they joined Israel?
What happened at Sinai was what happened at Sinai was that even the Jews became Jewish. I mean, think about it. The formality of Judaism happened at Sinai with the acceptance of the law. So really, anybody who accepted the law would have been in that category. And yet, we're still seeing that there was a bit different approach to what to do. Now, yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but
No worries.
where did they end up in the tribes? This 40,000, how did they?
That's a very good question.
Because if they became Jewish.
That's what right. But even in the desert, when they were encamping, where did they encamp? Because ultimately in Bamidbar, we read that there was a whole formula. Yeah, a whole order of camping, of encampment. That's what I was going to say. I don't know how many were left after this episode. But let's go through this. Let's see. So all of them gathered around Aaron, as it is said, and the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said, etc. So this Midrash is clearly telling us, implying that the ones who gathered, the unruly mob, were comprised, at least primarily, if not exclusively, of the Egyptians that had joined the Jews. Now, I understand that that's a bit of a convenient way to say, oh, hey, it wasn't us. It was the hangers-on. It was the people that joined, the Egyptians. I get that, but that seems to be what the Midrash is implying. Let's continue. Now, when Moses failed to return by the 40th day and the 6th hour of that day, in other words, high noon of what they called the 40th day, Aaron and Hur told them, he is now descending the mountain. But they did not pay attention. Some say that Satan arose and showed them the likeness of his beer. Is that how you pronounce it? Beer? Beer?
Yeah.
That's the coffin.
Yeah.
Showed them the likeness of his coffin on the mountain. And that is why they said, for this man Moses, right? For this man Moses, who has brought us up, we don't know what has become of him. Now, do they say that we don't know what's become of him? It seems like the Satan showed them an image, a mirage of Moses' coffin, and they believe that Moses had actually died upon the mountain. By the way, other commentators point out, I'm going to introduce this right here because it fits into the logic. Other commentators and Midrashim point out that they made of the following conclusion. He went up on the mountain without any food. Moses went up on the mountain without any food or water. Who can survive 40 days without food and water? Of course he's dead. I'm with you, but this was, I'm just... I hear that. This is one of the ideas. This is one of the that's brought in the commentaries.
They just held the mountain over their heads.
They
just got the Torah.
I get it.
They're worried what he's going to eat.
I get it.
God's got it.
Choosing food. There's a paranoia.
God's
You
got
ever,
it under control.
you ever been on a road trip and your mother packed you like 40 sandwiches and you're like, why? Like, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah,
It's not just
you're
a
on a
road trip. It's a plane when your mother ships tuna fish to you
Right.
for the plane ride home.
Right. And the plane ride is like 90 minutes.
And you don't
It's like, well, you never know if you're going to get delayed. Maybe there's going to be a diversion. That's like a diverted landing. Huh? Mothers will still advocate whether or not they can actually pack for you. Geographically speaking, is more of a challenge. Now, but again, I'm just sharing you what it says. It's not in this one, but it's in several of the other sources that they made a calculation. He didn't take any manna with him. There was no food. There's nothing on top of the mountain. How could he have survived? Let's continue. Then, and this is what I mentioned before, then Hur stepped forward and rebuked them. So, guys, come on, wait 24 hours or wait a little bit. Stop being so crazy. Forthwith, they turned against him and slew him.
Lesson learned. Mind your own business.
Well, hold. There you go. Now, when Aaron witnessed this, he became terrified and sought to occupy them with other matters. Yaakov said, was he trying to placate them? According to the Midrash, it sounds like the answer is yes, right? When Aaron witnessed this, he became terrified, top of the second page, and sought to occupy them with other matters. But they cried out, come on, make us gods. All that they demanded was known to the Holy One who spoke and the world came into being. In other words, God knew all of this was transpiring as it was going down. Now, Aaron said to them, remove the golden earrings that are on the ears of your wives. Why? Aaron told them to do this difficult thing because he was aware that the women would not agree to it. Why not? They had seen the miracles and the deeds that the Holy One, blessed be he, had wrought for them in Egypt and what had transpired at the Red Sea and at Sinai. And so they went to the men and said, God forbid that we should renounce the Holy One, blessed be he, who has performed all these miracles and mighty deeds in our behalf in order to fashion an idol. Basically, they said to the men, you guys nuts? You guys meshuggah? You want us to give jewelry to make a golden idol in defiance of God Almighty, who just took us out of Egypt and performed all these miracles? Are you crazy? Who does such a thing?
And from this, we learn a valuable lesson.
Which is?
Listen to the wives.
100%.
Always
Yes.
listen to the women.
Always. Exactly. The men, however, refused to listen to them. And thus the verse says in verse 3, all the people stripped themselves of the golden earrings that were on their ears. It does not say in their wives' ears, but rather in their ears. I mentioned this last week. So the men, knowing that the wives, by the way, it's not just that their wives refused to give them the jewelry because they don't want to give them jewelry. They said, why not? They said, what are you doing? This is a bad idea. Have you gone mad? Have you gone meshuggah? What are you thinking? And guess what? Not only did the men say, well, we don't need your jewelry, we can come up with our own gold, which is the practical, which, I mean, obviously did happen. That was a practical conclusion, but they simply did not listen to the warning of their wives. Let's continue. Rabbi Yirmiyah maintained. Oh, by the way, I should mention, one of the major ideas and themes of this text that we're learning, this Kabbalistic text that we're learning, is why it is that the women had faith and believed when the men didn't. And we're going to tie it into the masculine versus feminine dynamics. And we're going to say how femininity, how that feminine quality is actually more tuned to faith itself. But we're going to get there. We're not there yet. That's like the big idea that we're going to get to ultimately. Let's continue. Rabbi Yirmiyah maintained, listen to this. Rabbi Yirmiyah maintained that when they brought their earrings to him, Aaron raised his eyes heavenward and declared, unto you I lift my eyes, you are enthroned in heaven. He basically said, God, help me out over here. You who know all thoughts are aware that I do this unwillingly. He tossed their earrings into the fire, and the magicians approached. Which magicians? Remember those two magicians that we said before? Yeah, Yambros.
They should have vetted the 40,000.
They should have vetted them. So, and the magicians approached and performed magical feats. Some say that Micha, he's a name that you find, ground the bricks that Moses had saved into the mixture, and that he took the tablet which Moses had written upon when he raised Joseph's coffin out of the Nile and cast them into the smelting furnace amidst the earrings. Let me explain what's going on here. The truth is, I don't know about the reference of the bricks. He ground the bricks that Moses had saved into the mixture. It sounds like maybe Moses had saved bricks from Egypt, from the buildings. I haven't actually heard about this before, and I didn't have a chance to look into the commentaries on the Midrash. But I do know the second reference because that's a very famous reference. The gold tablet the tablet that Moses had written upon when he raised Joseph's coffin out of the Nile. So here is a story within a story. And I'm sure many of you have heard this, but I just want to share this so that it's so that everyone has this and that it's fresh in our memories. It was the night of the Exodus, and the Jews, it was the 10th plague, and Pharaoh had told Moses and Aaron to get out. Take your people and literally leave the country.
Like the State Department.
Because
Tells you to leave Afghanistan.
Oh, right.
It's the State
Right.
Department.
This is, we're not safe with you guys here. We don't want you here anymore. Get out. So what happens is that everyone starts, I think they were pretty much packed, but everyone gathers and they begin heading out. Moses remembers that there was a pledge, a long time promise that the Jewish people, the original family, had made to Joseph. Joseph had said that when you leave Egypt, take my remains with you. He said, don't leave me behind. Famously, when Jacob, the patriarch Jacob, passed away, he said, immediately lay me to rest in Israel, which they did in the Holy Land. But Joseph said, inter me here. I want to be with you throughout the duration of this exile. But when you leave, he says, I promise you, Hashem will remember you and take you out. God will take you out. When you leave, take me with you. And so the Torah says that Moses himself went and gathered Atzmot Yosef. He gathered the bones of Joseph, and took Joseph out. How did he find Joseph? Where was Joseph buried? According to other midrashic texts, the Egyptians, Pharaoh, had buried Joseph, embalmed him and buried him inside the Nile River, at the bottom of the Nile River. Why? Because the Nile was the source of life for the Egyptians. In an arid environment where where nothing grows, the Nile was, when the Nile rose and overflowed its banks, that's what provided irrigation and literal life to the Egyptians. And so they wanted to, Joseph, who had saved them from one famine, they felt was an individual who carried blessings. And so they interred him, they buried him, they laid him to rest inside the Nile River. So now Moses is walking the banks of the Nile River looking for Joseph's remains, and he can't find them. I'm sorry, I believe it was, one more detail, I believe it wasn't necessarily that Moses knew that, but it was Serach, Bat Asher, who was one of the daughters of Asher who lived a very long life. Who was she? Again, this is a story and a story and a story. So she was the one who had broke the news to Jacob that Joseph was still alive. She was the one that told her grandfather that her uncle was still alive. Remember when Joseph said, go tell dad that I'm still alive? And they broke him the news. Well, they knew that if they told him straight out, he might have a heart attack and like die of the shock. So she was musical and she composed the song. Yosef is still alive, and she sung it to him, or she broke him the news somehow gently, musically, whatever it is. And he was so thankful to her consideration and her kindness that he blessed her with long life. And she lived hundreds of years to the point that she was amongst those who left Egypt. And I believe that Moses went to Sarah because she was the only living person alive then that was around when Joseph died and when he was buried. So he said to her, we have a deal. We got to take him out. Where is he? So she said, he's in the Nile River. But where? So now he's walking. So now, fast forward. He's walking up and down. It's at night, middle of the night. He's walking up and down. He writes on a tablet, or he engraves on a tablet, Ale Shar, which means rise ox, because Joseph was likened by his father Jacob when Jacob was blessing all of his sons, and the tribe of Joseph is likened. Most of the tribes are compared to animals, some to sailboats, but most to animals. So
Just one to sailboat.
Yeah, just one. Joseph is likened to an ox. So on this tablet he inscribes Ale Shar, which ox rise, or arise, O ox. And he cast it into the Nile. And shortly thereafter, the coffin of Joseph rises. They didn't include this in the movie either, did they? I feel like they left out.
This is good stuff.
This is great cinematic material. What were they? Yes. So listen to this.
I can't believe they left this out.
Who we got to redo this?
Yeah.
Let's put together a quick budget, knock this out. All right. All we need, maybe it's the Prince of Egypt. Could be. Anyway, so he cast this tablet on the Nile, and then almost immediately the coffin of Joseph rises, he collects it, and that's it.
And then the thing he wrote on.
Oh, surreptitiously, individuals that were watching this go down gather the tablet that Moses had thrown into the water. They collect the tablet, and then this is what the Midrash says here. Let's go back. I just closed this text. Let me bring it open again for everybody to see. So some say that Micah ground the bricks that Moses had saved into the mixture, and that he took the tablet which Moses had written upon when he raised Joseph's coffin out of the Nile and cast them. The bricks that they ground up some bricks, and the tablet that said rise ox, into the smelting furnace amidst the earrings. So now you have in this furnace, you now have gold, and you have some bricks. Again, I don't recall the reference to the bricks, but you also have this tablet. On the tablet are written the words rise ox. Listen to this. Then the calf came forth leaping. It seems like it was animated almost. As it leaped out, the people began to cry out, "This is your God, O Israel." The guardian angels then began to proclaim, they forgot God, their Savior, who had done great things in Egypt. Unbelievable. The people already forgot God. You do a little magic trick, a little dancing golden calf, and that's it. No more God. Unbelievable. So what did Aaron do then? And remember, I cut this text off. I should have gone one more verse. He said to them, let the celebration be delayed until tomorrow. As it is said, and Aaron made proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. Whereupon the Holy Spirit called out, hasten to send. They have forgotten what I did for them. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, in this world they have sinned because of the evil inclination within them, but in the time to come I will remove it from them. As it is said, and I will take away the strong heart of your flesh. Exodus 36:26. Now, the Midrash doesn't end there, but that was enough what I wanted to quote, and also fit neatly on one page, double-sided, so I decided to end it there.
What does it mean when I take away the straw?
Good. So you guys are asking the same question. All right. So to answer that, it's interesting that the Midrash, in the middle of its narrative, throws in like a hope for the future. It's saying, and you know what? God said this is only possible that all of this mishagas, all this craziness, worshiping a golden calf, turning away from God and bowing down and worshiping something made out of molten gold, is only possible in our world that we live in which we have such a strong evil inclination, where we get so distracted so easily. But when Mashiach comes and Hashem will remove the evil inclination from us, the spirit of impurity, then this will no longer be a challenge, and we will all will be good, and we will live happily ever after. That's kind of what it's saying. It's kind of like a bracha for the future, but meanwhile, it's in the middle of this narrative, which is a very dramatic narrative. So what we see over here is a few things. Number one, when it comes to Aaron, the Midrash is clearly trying to ascribing positive intention. The Midrash is saying that from the beginning, he didn't want to be involved. From the beginning, he was trying to tell them, wait, but then Hur was killed, and then he had no other option. So then he tried to, delay them by saying, take the gold from your wives and daughters. And he knew that they would never give the gold. But then the people circumvented that delay tactic by bringing their own gold. So then he tried to stall them by throwing into the fire. And he figured, to throw into the fire, nothing will happen. Well, then the problem is that there was these magicians, Micha, the two magicians plus this guy Micha, sounds like he's not an Egyptian at all, but from the Israelites, who had collected the tablet and I guess some bricks and threw it in, and out came a golden calf, much to Aaron's consternation. So now what are you going to do? So then he says, all right, well, we'll deal with it tomorrow. But then, of course, as I mentioned, it's not here in the Medrash yet, but then they woke up early the next morning and they began worshiping it, and everything went.
Who's Mika?
He was the guy who threw the stuff in the fire.
But he's not.
Apparently. No. Oh, well, which prophet? No, not the, no. Different guy. Yeah, that's a little later.
That
Yeah.
has an H in it.
By the way, I forgot to tell you guys. Listen to this. The Ibn Ezra says that there is another there are others who say that how is he involved in this? Some say this wasn't Aaron. It was another guy named Aaron. It wasn't Aaron. It was Aaron Goldstein. Goldstein.
When it came out.
Much better.
Well,
listen,
you see what I did there?
hell of a lot more erudite than I am.
Well, I don't know if you need an erudition for that one. Sorry?
I'm gonna tell you, it was all Ben or Moss. There were no Goldsteins.
Exactly. There's no last name. So it says they went to Aaron, which prove to me that Aaron is that Aaron. So Ibn Ezra says, come on, seriously? Like, yeah, come on. When you say Aaron, you mean the Aaron of Moses and Aaron fame. Come on. Like, which other Aaron is suddenly being introduced in the narrative that they would go to fashion something? So clearly the commentaries and the Midrashim are invested in finding justification for Aaron's actions, because at the end of the day, he's not punished along with those that are punished with the sin, at least in an immediate and direct way with he himself. As I mentioned, there seems to be some consequence, and Aaron seems to be living with this for the rest of his life, because even when he is called into service of God, he is afraid of the implication of his participation in the golden calf. But that's a little bit about how it's understood in the Midrash, what the people were thinking, or what the Erev Rav, what this mixed multitude was thinking, what Aaron was thinking, and how it came about. I feel like I do want to share.
Question?
Yeah.
I guess question and comment. It sounds like Aaron suffered from a lack of gavura. In this whole story is
saying no.
tale of what happened to you.
Gavura, when just saying no, putting the brakes on it. But, and I'll quote, so I told you I have more sources here. Vayikra Rabbah, another midrash. At the time when the Israelites were about to commit the act, made the golden calf, they first came to Hur and they said to him, make us a god. Since he did not listen to them, Gavura, they rose up and slew him. Okay. Afterwards, they went to Aaron and said, make us a god, ... So is it, yes, he could have said no, but then he felt maybe he would have more influence in trying to stall them than saying no and not being able to stall them once they've killed him. In other words, you have more leverage if you're around, more influence if you're around.
Later, and it was Cosby and
Yeah.
and then who was the zealot?
Pinchas.
Pinchas went in there and he stopped the revolt by double murder or killing.
Right.
A double killing. Would that have been effective here if you would kill Giannis?
Yeah, I think they would have had to take out a lot of people, because it seemed like there was a big angry mob. It wasn't just a few people.
So
Yeah.
And then everybody was watching to see what would happen. So, moms are just a bunch of followers. They're kind of like.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying if we get rid of the head, take out the head, then you take out the rest. I wonder. And you know what? When Pinchas, when it was his act of zealotry that ended that plague, Aaron and Moses were standing around. And he said to them, guys, aren't we supposed to act in a zealous fashion? And Moses said to him, the one who reads the letter should be the one that takes. In other words, if you're the one making the call, then you take the action.
So I'm wondering,
maybe we needed a Pinchas.
Maybe Before got killed because he talked versus took action. He talked, and that wasn't enough for these guys because they were acting crazy.
Could be.
And the other question I have is this whole two questions. Is this whole thing the fact that Aaron preserves his own life, the fact that he is going to be the high priest, and he has to lead these people through their sins so that he can lead them through their redemption. And all
Oh, that's an interesting take. Because Aaron, that's good. Because Aaron is all about atonement and forgiveness. So he almost leads them through an episode, not intentionally, but he's facilitating. By the way, I want to share with you some more stuff. Rabbeinu Bachia writes the following. I told you I have a lot more text. I just didn't.
We have our own Aaron sitting here, Aaron. Because when you tell the story, picture Rabbi New Senior going out of town for some convention, and Rabbi Isser's in charge, and the congregation goes wild on it.
Saying if Rabbi New Senior is delayed in coming back,
Yes,
we're going to ask Rabbi Isser
to do something,
to create
cancel Kachnon or something crazy.
No, you're saying not make a golden statue of. All right.
I don't know how he would react.
Right. Well, there's only one way to find out. But listen. Right, like the logo of Sandy Spring. Guys, listen to this. Rabbeinu Bachia. Listen to what he says. And the Lord and against Aaron. This is a verse from Deuteronomy. It says, and against Aaron, the Lord was very angry, wanting to destroy him. That's what Moses says in his recap 40 years later. Moses says that God was angry against Aaron. Our sages in Vayikra Rabbah explain that the word lahashmid in this verse, to destroy, which is also in the Megillah, it refers to the death of Aaron's children, as I mentioned earlier. They base this on a verse from Amos, I destroyed his bows above and his roots below. As a result, listen to this, as a result of Moses' prayer on behalf of Aaron, God carried out only half his plan, allowing 2 of Aaron's sons to survive. It seems like Aaron's culpability was going to result in the death of his 4 children. Moses intercedes and only, I can't say only, but and 2 of the 4 perish and 2 of the 4 remain. Again, I'm just sharing you a collection of insight. Let's continue with some other stuff that I'm going to read to you. Again, you don't have this. I have this on my computer. Let's find this. Here we go. From Haktav HaKabbalah. It says, when the people asked for something, for an idol that will lead us, they did not deny God's existence. They merely wanted a visible image in addition. That is why Aaron did not consider it necessary to risk his life by opposing them. In other words, they weren't necessarily asking for an idol. They just wanted some sort of image. For since the mixed multitude had the status of B'nai Noach rather than of Jews, so it seems like there wasn't conversion, it was not forbidden for them to associate other powers with God. There's a bit of a difference when it comes to the prohibition against idolatry between the Jewish prohibition against idolatry and the universal prohibition against idolatry, where the universal prohibition against idolatry actually allows for some shituf, which is some sort of partnership, God plus one, whereas for Jews within Judaism, so that type of combination is proscribed, is forbidden. So Aaron felt that if these guys want an image, Muslim gain, doesn't matter, let them have it. All right. Good, right. And then it seems like it leaked over. Here we go. Perhaps we may add, this is according to the Arachaim, that Aaron had not made the golden calf with sinful intent, nor had he been involved with its worship. That is why a bull calf could serve as an atonement for Aaron. The same could not be said of the people at large, seeing their involvement in the sin of the golden calf had been intentionally, they had been aware of what they were doing. Okay. Other commentaries, again, there's just literally dozens and dozens of commentaries. And that is that. Oh, when Aaron was to perform the service for the first time, so he was ashamed to go close. And according to the Sifra, which is another medrash, they say that Aaron perceived the horned altar. The altar was a square that had at the corner protrusions, horns. Aaron perceived the horned altar as an ox and was frightened by it. He saw this altar and he saw the horns of the altar and is like, uh-oh, this is bringing back bad memories of the golden calf. So again, there's a lot of residual stuff that happens with Aaron himself. All right, I'm going to close this here because I think we have a lot of pieces. We don't have all the pieces. There's definitely more that I wanted to read, but it is I think that suffices for right now. Okay. All right, let's jump inside now our text. Okay, let's jump inside this text, and we're going to read a little bit of what we started last week, and then pose some really strong questions that need to be resolved. All right, so take that and pass it around. We are going to begin. Give me a quick second here. Let me open up. Let me open up the text.
Mr. Silver, you don't have any charts or diagrams.
See that? We need a little bit more.
Maybe you need to work.
We
with it.
need some more visuals. All right, incomprehensibility. All right, we're on page 24. Okay, I'm going to share this with our online crew so you guys can read this as well. And we're going to do this together. Okay, page 24 at the bottom. So as you recall, if you were here last week, as you recall, we talked about last week. We talked about the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh and how it's come to be something that's observed specifically by women as opposed to men, although it's observed by everyone as the first day of the month, specifically in matters of abstention or lessening the work that's specifically for women. And we discussed last week how that's a reward for not giving the jewelry, which we spoke about last week and this week, right? Not giving the jewelry earned the Jewish women a mitzvah, special mitzvah Rosh Chodesh. We asked last week, what's the connection between Rosh Chodesh and the jewelry and not serving the golden calf? So then to understand this, we're going to talk about the golden calf. Okay, so incomprehensibility of the sin of the golden calf, bottom of page 24. We will presently be able to understand all of this by first explaining the underlying idea behind the episode of the golden calf. In other words, we first have to understand what happened with the golden calf. Upon seeing that Moses delayed in descending from the mountaintop, and that the 6th hour had arrived, page 26, and Moses had not returned, the mixed multitude convinced the Jews to make the calf. Here he writes it straight up, that the idea didn't originate within the Jews, it originated within the mixed multitude. It's fine. So upon seeing that Moses hadn't returned, the mixed multitude convinced the Jews to make the calf. The Satan's wily plan succeeded. Remember, Satan was involved in showing them the coffin of Moses on the mountaintop. So the plan succeeded, and they proclaimed, "Here is your God, O Israel, who took you out of Egypt," upon seeing the golden calf. So he writes the following, and this is the question that, of course, we all wonder. He says, this is most astounding, especially considering that this was a generation of knowledge. In the Hebrew, it's known as dar de'ah, a generation of dat, of knowledge. These were people that had a perception of God. They had seen the miracles, they had seen the plagues, they had seen the splitting of the sea, they had seen the Exodus, the revelation at Sinai. They had seen so much. And so he asked the question, how could they think that a golden calf made of inert matter was a god and the one who had taken them out of Egypt? How can you think that this golden calf was, number one, how could you consider that to be a god? That you just made it. How could that be a god? And number two, how could that have been the God that took them out of Egypt? Are you kidding me? A God that you make now took you out of Egypt 3 months ago? You meshuggah? This, you just made something and you're saying, oh, this took me out of Egypt? It's crazy.
Wasn't it just a visual representation?
Good. Hold on.
But where does it also say?
It appeared, it doesn't say anything about Aaron carving or putting his hands on it.
Right. You're saying in the Torah text itself, it seems like Aaron used a tool to make it.
Yeah,
In the Medrash, it seems it popped out on its own.
right.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure how they explain that detail.
If Joseph was the ox, was that the bull, something symbolic of Moses in some kind of way in their minds? Does that represent it?
I don't know. Maybe. But look at how he phrases this in the last paragraph. Their own experience should have refuted such a notion. They all saw that no such calf existed at the time of the exodus from Egypt. And indeed, were Moses, and here's his other point. Indeed, were Moses to have come on time, the mixed multitude would have never been able to entice them into making the calf in the first place. Imagine if Moses would have come on time, in the brackets means when they thought he was going to come. Could the mixed multitude have ever said, oh, hey guys, with Moses there, hey, let's make a golden calf? Would have never gotten off the ground, right? And the biggest proof is that it never got off the ground at any point in time to make an idol when Moses was present. It never happened. So he's saying like this, it was only due to their error and the fact that it was a cloudy day, so they didn't know exactly when the 6th hour was, which led them into making or into believing that he was late, that the mixed multitude even had the opportunity to entice the Jews. So in other words, it's not like all the Jews were deluded or delusional and just, out of their minds and whatever it is. No, they would never have followed this plan to create a golden calf. They would have never been involved in that on their own. And if Moses would have come down, nor would the Satan's wily plan to have them form the calf have succeeded without that opportunity. The entire notion, as well as what this had to do with the fact that they thought that Moses was late, remains totally incomprehensible. In other words, this entire idea that they would make a calf, that they would believe that it's the God that took them out of Egypt months earlier, that they would ascribe any power to it, etc. It makes no sense. And why did that come up just because Moses was late? Because Moses was late, so now you revert to a golden calf? None of this makes sense. In other words, if you wouldn't have reverted to a golden calf if Moses wasn't late, the fact that he's late makes you do such an extreme action, believe in a golden calf? In other words, if it doesn't make sense logically, so just because someone's late doesn't make it make sense. You with me? If it makes sense, it makes sense. Then you don't need Moses to be late. It makes sense anyway. If it doesn't make sense, and the fact that Moses is late doesn't change anything either. So that's his question. And I'm telling you, what he's about to explain is absolutely mind-blowing. He's going to explain this based on Kabbalah, astrology, and psychology. And I would posit to say that we've never heard such a combination in the commentaries. This is the fourth Chabad Rebbe, known as the Rebbe Marash, Rabbi Shmuel of Lubavitch. This was penned in the year 1880. It's incredible what he's about to get into. It's about to get into the idols of Egypt and the stars and the constellations and Taurus, which is a bull. He's going to get into all of these ideas and weave them together and explain how it was possible to believe that this was the God, and not only the God, but the God who took them out of Egypt initially, even though this was only a representation of the force that had taken them out.
And I also learned that it was a mixed multitude that created that farce.
Yes, but how the Jews clearly the Jews bought into it. How could they, why would they have bought into it? And where were even the mixed multitude coming from? In other words, it has to come from somewhere. It has to have some plausibility. Again, it was wrong, but it had to have some sort of plausibility logically where they could then convince the others to believe in this.
Is that a bad thing?
Taurus, no, but they used it for, but Ford doesn't make it anymore. I don't think Ford makes Taurus anymore. Huh? Right, Taurus and Surus, exactly. So that's where we're going to close today.
What do the rental car companies get?
I was kidding. I don't know if they make Taurus. I don't know. But here's the thing. Next week, just so that we're all on the same page here, literally and figuratively. Next week, we're going to start chapter 2 of our text. And he's going to explain what Pharaoh's belief was and his subtle form of idolatry. In other words, when Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, God told me to let my people go, and Pharaoh says, I don't know God. There's a specific name of God that's being used. And the implication is that Pharaoh does acknowledge one of the names of God, but not Hashem, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the four-letter name of God. And he's going to explain, well, what are these two names? What do they represent? Why does what Elohim he believes in? Elohim he believes in. In fact, Joseph, many times, 200 years earlier, speaks to Pharaoh with Elohim.
Is it
When-
significant that that's plural?
Yes. The way Kabbalah explains the plurality of Elohim will also explain why Pharaoh was okay with believing in Elohim.
They believe there was a creator of the world. They're not
Exactly. They believed in a creator. They believed in a force of nature. They believed in all of that stuff. But Hashem, Havaya, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei that we believe in, which we'll have to explain what that means and how that differentiates, he was not on board with. That's why, but again, just to reference Joseph, when Joseph says to Pharaoh, when Joseph first interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and Pharaoh says, Pharaoh calls him out from the dungeon and he says, I have some dreams. I hear you can interpret them. Joseph says, I don't interpret anything. Elohim interprets dreams. Why is he speaking about God to Pharaoh? Because Pharaoh's on board with Elohim. Pharaoh's okay with Elohim.
But I thought it was Havaya that would have really been the one to interpret dreams.
Okay, so that we can have a question on
It's not in
Joseph.
Elohim's wheelhouse.
All right, so that we can question. Maybe he was kind of parsing his words to make them, to speak the same language as Pharaoh. Maybe there's a deeper intention that we have to look up. But the point here is that when Pharaoh says, I don't know Havaya, I don't know Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, it's very precise. The dialogue is very precise as to who he knows and who he doesn't know. So that's all next week. We'll speak about Pharaoh's belief. We'll speak about the meaning of teasing. Yeah, we do teasers. This is what do you mean? Oh, if this was Netflix, it would roll over. You could binge. It would roll over into the next episode.
What if we want to binge?
Then we would be here all day, and there's stuff that people have to do. Anyway,
We have to go to the aquarium.
yeah, that's it. We have to see some fish. Don't worship the whale.
Jewish festival.
I
Fish
know.
man,
Yeah,
Fish off,
exactly.
fish,
Carp.
carp.
All right, so we'll close it out here. What we presented today, just to recap what we presented today, we went through the story of this week's parsha and our discussion today, which is about the sin of the golden calf. We asked a lot of questions on Aaron. I presented a few different angles from classic midrashic sources and classic commentaries. We then posed some questions on the classic understanding, and asked the overall question, which is, if the rationale to make this calf was because Moses was not here, and now this is being proclaimed as the God that took the Israelites out of Egypt, that premise doesn't make sense. How could they have bought into that hook, line, and sinker? Speaking of fish, right? How could they believe that? How does that make sense? And of course, what does it mean for us? In other words, if we're being self-reflective, because Torah is all about life instruction. So then how do we sometimes fall into the trap of believing that the idols that we've just made are the ones that grant us security? That's a question that we can all ask ourselves even this week before we get to the answer. But how is it sometimes that we do the same thing? We create something. We're like, this is the God that took me out of Egypt, right? This is my salvation. I created this, and this is going to get me out of trouble, right? So, and sometimes this is our own undoing, right? The creations of our own hand that we believe, that we put all of our hope and trust in, sometimes, very often, can be the source of our own downfall or our own challenge. So all of this will be coming up next week and beyond as we explore what was Pharaoh thinking, what was the Arab thinking, what were the Israelites thinking, and why a calf? Why a calf? Why did they worship the calf? What is the meaning of that? And how does it connect with astrology and Kabbalah? All of that coming up. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Hope you enjoyed it. And see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Thank you for the bagels and lunch.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Absolutely.
So about the word.
Great class. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you. Great to see you.
Second thing,
Yeah.
he said, kind of, did God really set this up? Because God knows how these people respond.
Yeah.
He realizes that they're still.
Was it a setup?
They have was it a setup because they have an idea in their mind of the golden calf.
Right.
Is their most.
One of their idols. Thank you.
Yeah, their biggest idol is, so, and then can a calf leap on its own with magicians who are basically, playing tricks with vision in things. Maybe that he's,
Right.
right.
Which means that maybe it's not just visual. Maybe they did have some power, some dark magic. It's possible.
Or if they can't, maybe they're using the heat waves to say, hey,
Could be.
it's moving.
Right.
But I thought magic was prevalent in the
But
day.
let me finish off the thing.
Sorry.
Is this a setup from God, and can a calf actually, how much does God have in this? How much does God?
I would say it's clear that God is allowing Satan to get involved and to entice and all that stuff. I would agree with your question. In other words, in saying that it seems like God is setting them up, and yet free choice has still been granted. Even when we're tempted, the message is that we do have the calling and the ability to withstand the temptation. But that's
God wanted to take out those 40,000. So this was
maybe great to see you. Great to see you.
This was his excuse, but why does God need an excuse?
Right. Yeah. These are very good questions. We have to look back at the text. I mean, it's in the parasha. We would have to look to see if there's a number. I don't know that it was all 40,000. I don't know that it was the whole amount. It was definitely an amount. I don't know exactly how many it was. We'll have to see. I know that there were many Jews that were executed as well or killed as a result of this. It says the Shevet Levi, because Jews got swept up in this and they served idols, and that was a huge no-no, understandably. Was it a setup? I mean, I would say, yeah. It's always a setup. In other words, it's always a setup in the sense that if God runs the world, anytime we face a temptation, if God didn't want us to face the temptation, he could have orchestrated things in which we would never face that challenge or that temptation. The fact. Oh, right.
So he set the scenarios there, it's up to us.
Right. He's setting up the scenario. In other words, what better, actually, think about it this way, what better proving ground to see 40 days later if the idea has solidified about no idols than presenting the opportunity. In other words, presenting, now Moses is gone, so now what are you guys going to do? How are you guys going to handle that? Are you guys going to make a golden calf? Are you guys going to hold strong? It's crazy. The whole thing is crazy. And that was his last question. His last question is, look, if it's so implausible to believe that a molten calf has any power, A, and that B, it was the God that took you out of Egypt 3 months ago, you just made it. If that's implausible, then how does it become plausible when you mix in something about Moses not coming back? That seems to be like a completely unrelated factor. Okay, Moses is gone, so maybe you're panicked, but how does that make you believe in something? So therefore, he's going to introduce another idea, that the idea of a calf or a Taurus, a bull, having power was absolutely plausible based on Egyptian culture and belief, based on the influence, and Jews were there for hundreds of years. So they had been steeped in that mindset, even if that wasn't the Jewish mindset, but they had been steeped in that mindset. And it was plausible, given the right circumstances, as we'll see, this became something that they could potentially believe in. And that was where the problem came in. Now, was it a setup? I would say yes, in the sense that, not the actual sin, but the circumstances surrounding the sin. So it's like when God leaves in our way a cash register open and there's no one around and you're short $100 and there's $100 right there. Is that God? I'm going to say yes. Is that God by divine providence saying, here's the money you need, take it? No, it's a test, right? That's what, like in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, Moses says, be careful of false prophets who will perform miracles and they will work. And then they're going to say, worship idols. So the question is asked, well, hold on. If they're about idolatry, then why does God give them power? And the answer is to make a test. Because if there was no power, if there was no temptation, it wouldn't be a test. Free choice lives off of the possibility of the opposite, of the negative choice. Anyway, all right. But all of this we're going to continue to explore. It's actually very creative, his approach, very, very understandable. And it like really puts together all the pieces. So I'm excited about this, but we'll pick it up next week.
Is this one
To see.
that you, edited?
This book, I always look on page 8. That's where it would be. Let's see.
It's
Page
another week
8.
to work very hard. Last week was like this and you do it again. Really?
You know what? I don't see it. I don't see my name. Rabbi Shays Taub, Rabbi Avram D. Weisfish, Rabbi Friedman, Rabbi Oladort, and Rabbi Mendel Lane.
That's
Nope. This is not me. I didn't remember, but it's not me. It's still good though. Even though it wasn't me, it's still good. Yes. Hold on one second. I'll formally close it out and then. All right, Ray and Maritza and Ellen, good to see you. And Ray, great to see you. Sei gesund. Be well. Afreilich and Purim, everybody. And we'll see you guys soon. We'll catch you soon. All right. Take care.